Yeah, I got the recording button now. Okay. 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 Yes, recording is started now. Perfect. So I'll quickly repeat myself, right? So sales is your client acquisition activity where your clientels are institutional investors, government bodies, HNIs, high net worth individuals, and it is these parties who basically invest money with an investment bank. An investment bank then takes that money and invests on clients' behalf into the market, and that activity is called your trading activity, and that is what is called your trade initiation. The trade initiation is the first step of your trading where you are buying and selling, right? Right. Can I move on now? So can someone now tell me what is the difference between an exchange traded instrument and an OTC instrument? Can anyone tell me what is the difference between an exchange traded instrument and OTC instrument?
Exchange traded instruments are those which will be traded in exchanges. OTC
Mhm.
are kind of in the market with between two parties. There will not be any exchanges, no standardized products and something like that.
Can you give me examples, please?
So in exchange, I would say we trade in stock exchange. That's an exchange traded.
What
So
instrument
for
do you exchange? Yes, Nikhil, you're right. But what instrument do you exchange? Or what instrument do you buy and sell in an exchange traded product?
In exchange, we
stocks,
buy
common shares.
derivative stock.
Exactly, stocks.
Stock.
Stocks is what you trade, right? Correct. Can you
Yes.
trade derivatives on exchange? Can you trade derivative on exchange?
Yeah,
Forwards
but
and
not
futures exchange trade. Are
Sorry,
forwards are not
forwards
included.
are forwards exchange traded, Saujanya? Can you think again?
Forwards are traded in the OTC market.
Yes, forwards are traded in the OTC market. So what derivative can you trade on exchange?
Future options.
Futures and options, exactly. So futures and options are traded on exchange, right? So if equities are traded on exchange, futures and options are traded on exchange, right? Then what OTC derivatives are traded in OTC market? What are OTC derivatives?
Over the counter market.
Yeah, but which instruments? Which instruments do you trade? Okay, forwards, fine.
Swaps, gold,
Swap.
Exactly, exactly. Swaps.
foreign currencies.
Yes, okay. Not gold. Okay. Gold is a commodity. Commodities are traded on exchange. Commodities are not traded in OTC market. Okay. So your OTC and the commodity is not a derivative, by the way, Divya. So when we are talking about OTC derivative, we are specifically talking about forwards and swaps. In fact, what we are talking about in detail is swaps. Swaps are your most highly recognized and traded OTC derivative instrument. Okay. Okay. You're getting this understanding? So predominantly when we are talking about swaps, can anyone tell me what is a swap? What do you do on the trade initiation in a swap? So OTC trade life cycle predominantly means we are talking about a trade life cycle of a swap. So when a trade initiation happens in a swap, what exactly happens? What do you do in a swap?
Hedging.
Hedging is a strategy, not an activity. I'm asking what do you do What exactly do you do? Okay. If you
It's an
go to stock
experiment.
exchange,
Based on
if you go to stock exchange, 1 second, Sojana. If you go to stock exchange, you will want to buy equity. Let's take example. So what will you do? How will you buy the equity? What will you do? What your activity will be?
we place order
You place the order, correct? And how do you place the order?
electronically.
Uh, thank you. Yes, but what do you do exactly?
We
You
could not
put in
able
the
to.
quantity, you put in the price that you want to buy, sell, correct? That's how trading is done.
Yeah.
So what do you do in swap? There is one more trainer 15 there. I'm not sure who is that person. So either that trainer 15 or Bhargavi is recording it, because I'm not able to control the recording from here. So once you leave the meeting and you get a convert option, please don't close it. Okay, anybody who gets that after leaving the meeting once the class gets over. I am recording. Yeah. So who is this trainer 15 who said I am recording? What's your name? Prabhakar. Okay, Prabhakar, you have the recording. Please ensure you convert and you send it to Sadaf and Kiran. Okay, don't send it to the batch members. Then the batch member will send it. Then they will send it to the batch members. Fine. Okay. So what do you do in swaps is my question. What do you do when you initiate a trade in swaps? Have you studied swaps? It's an agreement. Yes, I know. What do you do in a swap? What is a swap? Define swaps. All of you will have your books with you, right? Your notebooks, your other things. Can you turn it over and see? Exchange of interest rate. Exactly, Alok. You're right. So swap predominantly is an instrument, right? Wherein you are exchanging the interest rates, which is a basic swap. There is an equity swap also. There is a total return swap also. But the basic understanding of a swap is what are you swapping? You are swapping interest rates, right? Divya has a return exchange of default risk. Yes. Which type of swap is that, Divya? Exchange of where you do exchange of default risk? CDS, exactly. Credit default swaps, right? Now, can someone tell me what are the parameters of a swap? Like there will be a trade date, right? Like that. What are the other parameters that you know for a swap? This is important for you to understand, ISDA. Can anyone tell me what are the other parameters of a swap?
We have settlement date, currency
Settlement
one, currency two, notional one,
currency two. So notional
notional
will
one.
come before. Okay, notional one, notional two, right?
Well,
Okay.
as in I'm telling not according to the particular like
Which
steps.
is order? It's fine.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Akim.
And we have direction, we have
You have
exchange rate.
direction, you have exchange rate. Really? Do you have an exchange rate here?
Now, as in when we are talking about FX swap.
Okay. So you
That
have
also there.
you predominantly have an interest rate.
Interest rate, yeah, fine.
Premium. Really? There is a premium in a swap?
I guess I got confused.
No, there is a premium. There is a premium in a swap. I think you love CDS a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there will be a premium as well. Fair enough. But that's for the CDS. Yes. What else? There is something very important that you guys are missing. Happens at the beginning itself. Starts with E, ends in E. That's your clue. Payment date. Okay, fine. Yeah.
Is it exercise then?
No, not exercise.
Execution.
Exchange.
Termination date. Okay, fine. There is something else missing.
Execution.
But there is something very important missing at this point of time, that is starts with E, ends in an E as well. Interest rate is written. Yes. Yes, Preeti, interest rate is written. Exchange. No, not exchange. So I'll want to understand. So let's say trade is beginning on a Monday, right? Let's say 26th. I know it's holiday in India, but let's say 26th is a working day. And you start a trade on 26th. Is it necessary that the interest calculation has to start on 26th itself? Or it can start from 27th as well, if both the parties agree? You understood my question? If you take a swap position, let's say you initiate the trade on a Monday, which is 26th. So from the date you start the interest rate swap, interest calculation will start, the accrual of interest will take place. Yes, no? Now, what I'm asking you is it necessary, or is it a mandate that the interest calculation has to start from 26th itself, or it can start from 28th as well, if both the parties agree, of course? Can 28th be a date as well? For interest calculation to begin, even though your trade started on 26th? Does everyone agree to Nikhil? Nikhil has said yes. T plus 1 is ideal. Okay, yes. T plus 2 is also ideal. T plus 1 is also ideal. So Nikhil and Saujanya both have said that it is not mandatory that interest accrual has to happen on 26th itself. It can be a 27th or it can be 28th. Yes. My question is, are they right? Do you guys agree to it? And if you guys agree to it, then you have to tell me what is the difference between the trade date and the date from which the interest accrual or interest calculation begins. So guys, the date you start your trade, right? That's called your trade date. But the date your interest calculation becomes effective is called your effective date. Understanding it? Which means if you have the trade date as 26th, effective date can be 26th. Then your trade date and effective date are same. However, there are certain situations where it could be that trade date is 26th, but effective date can be or 27th or 28th, right? So what is important is that in swap, the day the trade gets into position does not necessarily mean that it is in effect as well. So it's very, very important to understand what is the effective date of a swap, because it is from that date only that the calculation of interest rate begins. Is it clear? And when you have put payment date here, you have to also add a word called as frequency. You need to know when and all you have to pay. And there is one more thing that needs to be added here is called reset date. Okay, these are some of the parameters of a swap. However, the reason I was asking you to help me with this is, can you tell me what's the risk here? What's the risk here? Now that you have the trade parameters in front of you, what's the risk?
Interest rate fluctuations are the
Counterparty risk, yes, Preeti, but you have to be a little more, what do you call it? Little more precise in your answer. Counterparty risk is a very broad term. Fluctuations in IR, yeah, fluctuations in IR will not matter to you because you are already, yeah, it will matter to you, but then that's already taken into consideration, right? In an interest rate swap, one rate will be floating and one rate will be fixed. So the way the floating is moving, your cash flow will change. But what is the risk here? And maybe maybe that risk can happen because of an interest rate fluctuation, Saujanya and Nikhil. So can you tell me what exactly are we talking about here? What risk are we talking about here? There is a counterparty risk, bankruptcy. Okay, that's a huge term again. Unable to pay. What word for that? Unable to pay starts with D. Delta.
Default risk. Default
Exactly.
risk.
There is a default risk. Default risk of what? Default of what, guys? You have to be very precise again. Default of what? Default of credit. Nahi. Default of
Payment.
payment.
So credit default system is when we have bought some securities from a bank, and if they unable to pay our premium, if say 5% is the interest they are giving, if they are unable to pay, then IB will help us in that scenario. So that is a credit default CDS.
Yeah, so CDS is predominantly a covering that you basically take against the risk of default.
Basically, we are hedging our risk.
Yeah, you are. Yep. But your risk is what here? Default risk. Default of what? Payment, right?
Default of payment, yeah.
Yep. But my next question to you is there a risk of default on stock exchange? Sunny and
No,
says
there's no.
why
There's
Anupam?
none.
And why do you
That's
say
because if the order is matched, the exchange makes sure that it's settled because there are counterparties involved that make
exactly?
sure that both the parties.
So exchange ensures trade settles, but exchange ensures how? There is one answer for that. It starts with
They'll
M.
match the order.
They do match the order, yeah, but then exchange is guaranteeing you the settlement, right? The trade settlement is guaranteed when the order is matched in an exchange. Yes, we all agree. How does exchange guarantee you?
Because there are custodians and clearing houses involved that make sure.
Is there a risk of default on exchange? No, Anupam, no. Clearing house, yes, but then again, there is one word for it. Yeah, come on, starts with M. Mark to market is a calculation of P&L, profit and loss. They do not. For mark to market, what needs to be done? What do you need to maintain? Margin, exactly. So the answer, is there a risk of default on exchange? The answer is no. Why?
Innovation.
Because of margin maintenance. You have to maintain a margin. When you trade on an exchange, you have to maintain the margin, right? Yes, no. But in an OTC derivative, is there any place you are going and maintaining margin? Has anyone asked you margin? No, right? And which is why there is a risk of default. Guys, you have to understand the connect. You're getting the flow now. The question that I first asked you is, tell me what are the parameters of a swap, right? And you gave this to me. Here you understood that there is going to be an effective date from which interest rate will start getting calculated. However, this interest rate calculation needs to be paid at a certain frequency on a payment date. Yes, no, based on your notionals and other piece. But there is a risk. There is a risk that this payment on payment date might not come to you. Why? Because there is a risk of default. The whole reason for that risk of default is there is no margin. In an OTC derivative trade, there is no margin that is required. However, in an exchange, this risk does not exist, which is why the reason for that is there is a margin that you have to maintain for trading on exchange. Do we all agree to this? And have you guys got an understanding of what I was trying to arrive at? Perfect. Can I move on? Any questions up until now?
Hello.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, here I want to ask that these margins are maintained in clearinghouse.
No, you maintain the margin in your demat account, your trading account.
Okay, so how is that different to clearinghouse? Actually, there also we have to
So the
like
work
we.
of a clearinghouse is to clear your trades. Their job is to basically ensure that the securities that you are buying or you are selling, it is getting debited or credited. That's what they do. The word clearing means they're clearing something. What are they clearing in this case? They are clearing your trade positions. How? By debiting or crediting your account based on the trade that you have done, right?
Okay, but they still keep some minimum amount with them.
They keep some minimum amount with them. What exactly are you trying to say here, Preeti?
I mean, in order to settle the trade in later date, in case any of the counterparty defaults, so they still maintain some money with them, right?
Which is what you are maintaining in your trading account.
Okay.
So the trading account that you have is linked to your clearinghouse. So clearinghouse does not maintain anything, right? The only thing a clearinghouse maintains is the stock positions in a demat format.
Okay, yeah, understood. Thank you.
Okay. So moving on, now that there is a risk of default that we have known in OTC derivatives, why will anyone trade in OTC derivatives, guys? Will you, when you know that you're going to lose money, will you want to invest money there? High profit, yes, Prashant, but nobody wants to make any profit when they know that their entire money can be gone.
Sir, because in OTC order execution is guaranteed, but in exchange it is not.
Okay, but order execution guarantee, and then there is a default risk that comes up because of that. How does that help anyone? Yes, customized is the right answer. What you said also is correct. Leverage, yes, there is a leverage there, but guys, please understand, we are talking about trillions of dollars here. Okay, we are not talking about $100,000 or $50,000 or 1,000 rupees, 2,000 rupees. We're talking about trillions of dollars. The amount that we're talking about is immensely huge. We're talking about $5 to $8 trillion market segment here, right? Imagine if only 1% of the amount gets defaulted. Just imagine the amount of money that you're looking at in terms of default. It can wipe out banks. It can wipe out countries, economy completely, right? Which is where it was important for parties who are trading in OTC derivative to bring in some form of regulation, right? Margin maintenance is a regulation that market regulator brings into picture. However, in OTC derivative, there was no market regulator, and which is where ISDA came into picture. Have you heard of ISDA before? Anybody? So ISDA is your international swaps and derivative agreement. Sorry, derivative association. Okay. ISDA is your international swaps and derivative association. This is the body who is responsible to regulate OTC market. Sorry, to regulate trading in OTC derivative market. Understanding it? Yeah. So what is an ISDA? Now we need to understand that piece. See guys, so what happens is, because there is no regulatory body as such, this association has been created, which predominantly publishes a master agreement. Okay, they publish a master agreement. It's a legal agreement. A legal agreement. So when two bodies are trying to trade in OTC derivative, let's say for example, Barclays and Societe Generale, they are going to trade in an OTC derivative market. They need to sign, it's called as ISDA master agreement. Okay, just like when you have to trade on a stock exchange, you need to basically become a trading partner or a trading member at the stock exchange. Okay, which investment banks are. You and me cannot, because of the expense that has to be incurred to be a trading partner or a trading member of a stock exchange. So we here rely on demat account providers like your Kotak Securities or an ICICI Securities or an HDFC Securities in India, or predominantly your Zerodha. These are your trading partners. They have the trading membership with the stock exchange, and they provide us a platform to go buy and sell the order through them. So they then take all the orders in bulk and they go and publish it on the stock exchange, and we get the trading completed. That's for the retail membership. But investment banks don't need that. They are big players. So they directly are members of the stock exchange. Okay. Similarly, when they have to do a trade in OTC derivative market, they need to sign something called as an ISDA master agreement. Okay. This ISDA master agreement is a legal document. What do you mean by that? When it is a legal document, it is bounded by a court of law. Yes, bounded by law. There are ISDA master agreements which says London law, which says New York law, and also has, I think, Tokyo law. Tokyo law, just let me verify. It's Hong Kong or Tokyo. Yeah, it's Tokyo law. Okay, so what predominantly it means is that if you're signing a London law, then you are bounded by the court of law of London. If you are bounded by New York law, you will have to reach to New York law in case of any form of default, and similarly you will have to reach out to Tokyo court of law in case you find some form of default if you have signed a Tokyo law. Guys, this is an agreement. Now let's look at a ISDA agreement before I move further. You guys can see 2002 master agreement, this one, 2002 master agreement. You guys can see it? Yes? Okay. Can you see this one? What do you read on the top? Below master agreement, what do you read? Can anyone tell me what do you read?
Documents.dps.ny.gov.
It says dated April 6, 2006. Bears Stearns Financial Markets, and it says long some mortgage company. That's what it is. I'm not able to read it properly. But what is this predominantly telling you? This is telling you that an ISDA master agreement, right? An ISDA master agreement is has to be signed by two parties. So when I told you it has to be signed by two parties, what I was trying to show you is the agreement that is getting signed, right? Because without signing an ISDA master agreement, you cannot go ahead and trade in the OTC derivative market. Please note this down. This file, sorry. Okay. Now this one, give me 1 minute, guys. Let me just pull up something. This is not my laptop, so I'm finding a little difficulty. Okay. Fine. So this is what you see on your screen. It says ISDA 2002 Master Agreement dated as of 22nd March 2011 between Bank of America and LKQ Corporation. Okay. What is predominantly happening here is this is a standard template, guys. What you need to understand is it's a standard template. Okay. What do you mean by standard template? When we say standard template, we are trying to say that anybody who signs an ISDA agreement, it will exactly be the same. Only the signing party's name will differ and the date will differ. If someone is signing a 2002 master agreement, okay, which was, so this is the version 2002 which came into existence. If someone is using that, every single terminology, you see here, interpretation, obligation, guys, this is a legal document, okay? So you literally have to understand that there will be legal terminologies here, like deduction or withholding for tax, netting of payments. But master agreement will tell each and everything. It will detail out every single activity that happens in a OTC derivative transaction. Okay, so what happens if there is a bankruptcy? It will tell you, right? Every single termination events are there. So an ISDA predominantly is a master agreement. So if someone asks you to define ISDA, how will you do that? Can anyone tell me before I give my answer? Anybody want to give it a try? So an ISDA master agreement is a legal document which is a standard template signed by two parties before entering into an OTC derivative transaction. Okay? A legal document, standard template, these are your keywords, has to be signed before two parties enter into a OTC derivative transaction. And this is a standard template, guys. So every single thing will be mentioned here, and it will be the same for anybody who signs it. So if a Bank of America, right, is signing with a particular client, and if a SocGen is signing with a particular client, or a SocGen and Barclays is signing, the document will not change. The terms will not change. Clear? Is this clear to you until now? Which means if ISDA master agreement is a standard template, right? Is a standard template. It will mention the terms and conditions which parties entering into OTC derivative has to follow. And this is where they mention can you tell me what is collateral? Can you tell me what is collateral? Anybody can tell me what is collateral, guys? You guys are losing interest. Come back, please. Bring the focus back. Tell me what is a collateral.
Something which is kept as a instrument. If something is, if someone defaults, then we will surrender.
Exactly. Security for repayment of debt is right. What Saurav is saying is right. You keep an asset or you keep something against a debt. This is very, very important. You're understanding it, right? Similarly, in an OTC market, right, you have to maintain something called
The security remains with the buyer, but the position. Oh no, so the position remains with the buyer, but the rights of that asset is with the creditor.
I couldn't hear you properly, Saurabh. There is a lot of echo.
I mean to say that a security, the position of security remains with the buyer, but the rights of that security is with the creditor. Who is
Yeah,
lending
which is
the money.
okay. Yes, which is okay. Correct. Right. So let's understand what is a collateral, guys, now. Okay. Notional 1 million. Floating rate LIBOR plus, there is plus here, plus 10 pips, fixed 3.5%. Party A paying floating, party B paying fixed. Just give me a minute. Give me a minute. Sorry, someone was at the door. Okay. So party A paying floating, party B paying fixed, right? Right. Now, someone said MTM. Okay, someone said MTM. Who was that person who said MTM? Sometime back on the chat, someone wrote, what's MTM? Don't worry, I'll relate everything, but I'm asking you questions in broken pieces now. What is MTM? Mark to market. Perfect. What does mark to market mean? There are only a handful of you guys are responding. Saujanya, Preeti, Anupam, Saurav. That's about it. I don't see anyone else. Please participate. Don't just wait there, as I said. What is mark to
Sir,
market?
MTM is daily calculation of profit and loss, like on daily basis.
Exactly. Perfect, Akib. So mark to market means daily P&L calculation. Where have you learned mark to market calculation in your level 1?
So futures.
Yes, you learned it in futures, right? Mark to market happens in futures. Does it happen in options?
No, sir.
It happens in options as well, but it's slightly different. But anyways, it's not something that you need to learn. But the answer is yes. In any derivative contract, mark to market has to happen. Okay, because there is a daily price fluctuation. What will fluctuate in an OTC derivative? In this example that I have written, what will fluctuate? Like you do mark to market calculations for futures and options. Similarly, you will do mark to market for a, please go on mute if you're not speaking. Someone is on unmute. Please mute yourself, everyone. Right. So similarly, in an OTC derivative also, daily mark to market happens. So, which means you're daily calculating your P&L. And here, what will fluctuate that you need to calculate mark to market? Their price fluctuates, right? Here, what will fluctuate? Floating interest rate, exactly. Preeti and Saujanya are right. It's floating interest rate. What kind of floating interest rate have I mentioned here? Okay, I'll now ask names and people will answer. You guys hold on. Right, Chetan, can you tell me what have I mentioned? What form of floating rate of interest have I mentioned in my example here? Chetan, you there? Sir, yes. Can you tell me, Chetan, what form of floating rate of interest have I mentioned in my example? I'm in office, so couldn't reply. You can chat if you can, and you can reply. Okay, let me pick up Kapil. Kapil, you there? Komal, you there? Komal Tiwari? Wait, Saujanya. The moment I started asking name, Prasad left. Mithun, you there? Mithun, Nikhil. Nikhil is in office, he said. Mithun? Well, you guys have just logged in and went away somewhere or what? Parul, you there? Yeah, I know, Nikhil, you are in office. What about others? Parul, Kapil? Parul, what floating rate of interest have I put on my screen? Can you unmute and speak the answer, please? Vatsal, you there? Vatsal? Prashant? Prashant, tell me what is LIBOR?
London interbank lending rate, sir.
So London interbank lending rate will become London interbank lending. It will become LIB LR, no? London interbank offered rate, exactly. So LIBOR is London interbank offered rate. Okay, or offer rate is also the right word. This is your floating rate of interest, right? Can anyone tell me couple of others floating rate of interest accepted internationally? LIBOR is 2%. Okay, thanks, Parul.
Euribor.
Unibor. Unibor
Yuri,
is
Yuri,
wrong.
Yuri.
Euribor.
Yuri.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
No, Chetan has written Unibor. That's not right.
Okay,
Euribor
okay.
is also wrong. It's EURIBOR, Chetan, right? It's Euribor. MIBOR. Okay. International ones. In US,
HIBOR.
what do we use
HIBOR.
in US?
HIBOR.
Okay. What do we use in US? TIBOR is okay. Tokyo, Anamika, fine. In US, what do we use? Find it out. Assignment for you guys. I was writing the answer, but I thought leave it. Okay. So now you have understood that these are your floating rate of interest, and this will go up and down on daily basis. Yes, no, which means there will be daily fluctuations. Understanding it, and which means that there will be daily risk that you will be exposed to. Yes, no. You're understanding it? Calculate what party A will pay and what party B will pay. At LIBOR is 2%. Tell me the amounts. Open up your calculators and calculate how much party A will pay, how much party B will pay. LIBOR is 2%. I am asking you the amount, not the percentage, guys. How much will this be? This will be 2.1%, just in case you are not able to catch it. 10 bips is 1%. 100 bips is 1%. Bips is basis points. 21,000 will be paid by A. Okay, fine. And what will B pay? 25,000. Okay. So what happens here is, who is at risk? Anamika, can you unmute yourself and tell me who is at risk? No one should answer. No one should chat. Anamika, you there? Okay, write your answer. Who is at the risk, Anamika? Wrong answer. All of you wrong. There are only two answers, A and B. If B was wrong, obviously it will be A. I need the logic. Why it is A and why it is not B.
Sir, because A has floating rate of interest, na, it can go up or down, but B is
No,
fixed.
no. You don't look at it that way. You don't look at it that way. You look at the sum, the total amount. How much is A paying and how much is B paying? You decide who is at risk it with respect to the absolute number, not with the percentage. There is no chance, there is no guarantee how LIBOR will move. Yes, Saurabh, tell me why A. Because it is the party who has to receive more money is at risk always. B is paying to A. If we net these two amounts, who will be paying to whom? Who will be out of the money if default happens? How B, Preeti? Okay, all of you guys have to receive 1 million from me. Okay, correct? You have to give me 950,000. Who is at risk? Which is the same case, no? Here you are A, I am B, I am paying more to you. If I go bust, you lose that 50,000 which you are supposed to pay, which you are supposed to get. Guys, A is paying 21,000, correct? B is paying 25,000, correct? Which means B is paying 4,000 more to A. Yes, no. Which means if a net amount is to be paid, who will pay whom? Who will pay whom? It will be B to A, correct? Which means the party which has to receive the money is always at the risk, not the party who is paying the money. That person already has the money. If party B has to pay 4,000, that means party B anyways has that 4,000 with them still. If they default or if they go bust, it is A which is at risk, correct? Because A will be out of the money. A will not receive the money. You're understanding it, guys? You have to be little clearer here to understand this. Getting it? Any questions? Saurabh, did you understand?
So the only confusion that I had is when we were discussing, right? There was this a swap where there's an agreement, floating versus fixed, right? So both the parties will be paying to a middle layer, like an investment bank. That's how that was the example given to us. There is a floating rate paid by one party and a fixed rate paid by
So the
another.
example that was given to you is right. And I will tell you what needs to be added to that. And it was not told you then because it had to be covered in this topic. So in your example, I don't know if I can draw it now, but let me just see 1 second. Let me open a Word document. So in the example that was given to you, it was predominantly this. There is party A. There is party B. Let's say there is your this party, and this party, this triangle is your investment bank. This one is paying here, correct? Yes, no. This one pays to this one. This one pays to this one, right?
Yes, yes,
Correct. This was what was told to you.
yes.
But what happens in real world is, right? In real world, there will be two IBs that will be there, because IBs will trade it between themselves. So they will have one client of theirs. Okay. This guy does the exchange with IB. This guy does the exchange with this IB. But what will these two IBs then do? They will also do exchange with someone, right? So they will enter into contract in between themselves, understanding the key. So the example that was given to you is, we just showed you how two parties are reaching out to IB to exchange. So they are exchanging with an IB, understanding it. But when two IBs are basically entering into a contract, then they will also exchange something amongst themselves. This is how trading works, guys. See, these guys, they are the clients. They are coming and exchanging. But what will IB do with that? Where will IB want to make more money? So IB acts as a broker. Yes, they will again go in and do another trade with another IB. So the risk here is that if this IB has to pay to this IB 5,000 rupees, $5,000, let's say, and this IB goes bust, then there will be a problem, right? That this IB will have. Understanding it? Yes, no. Have you got the concept now? Okay, so this IB will go, which is where is party A who is at risk. So who will post collateral? Who will maintain that margin? The collateral. Collateral means the party who is owing money will have to pay the collateral, correct? Yes, no. If you go to a gold shop and you take you take money against gold, you will be the one who will be keeping gold as a collateral, correct? So in this case, who is the party who is owing money? Party B is owing money. So who will be posting the collateral? Who will be the one who has to maintain the collateral? Yes, so party B will post, the word is post the collateral. Concepts are clear, guys, up until now? Any questions up until now? Please let me know. I'll pause for 2 minutes. But please let me know anything that you want to ask. Some even minutest of things that you have not understood up until now. This is slightly technical, not difficult, but it's important to understand the flow in your head. Am I too fast?
Sir, I understood until when you said that party A is at risk, receivable party is at risk. I understood that, but can you please explain once more that so party will post the collateral? How?
See, when party A is at risk, which means party A is supposed to get the money. Yes, no.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Right. So what happens is, until money is paid back, until money is paid to them, party A will receive a collateral as a assurance that if party B does not pay, party A will keep that collateral with them. Okay.
Yes,
Clear,
sir.
guys? Clear, guys?
Sir, yes, sir. Now understood. Sir, who enters into these swap contracts? These are financial
Investment banks.
institutions,
Yeah,
government.
these are all done by investment banks. So what happens is, financial institutions facilitate saving of interest rate expenses by creating these kind of structured products. So swap is a structured product. right? An interest rate swap or a credit default swap. These are your structured product examples, right? So let's say a company has taken loan. Let's say you have a company and you have taken a loan, and I'll repeat the same example which has been taught to you. Right? You have taken a loan and you are paying a fixed rate of 10%, but suddenly you realize that 10% is going to be more because the floating rate might come down to, let's say, 9%, right? So these investment banks, right, because they have huge clienteles, right? These clienteles will always have some or the other form of debt with them. So what do? Is they create structured products wherein what they're doing is they're facilitating these clienteles to somehow save the additional interest that they might be paying on a particular loan. And understand one thing, guys, even 0.1% is a huge amount in a debt. Okay, it might not be a huge amount when you have taken a debt of 100 rupees, but it will be a huge amount when we are talking about 100 million, 200 million, 500 million, 1 billion, right there. So investment banks create these structured products, and once they have done the exchange with the particular client of theirs, they will then go and sell these instruments in the market. Who will buy these? Some other investment bank will buy it. Okay, and that's how they predominantly make money. There are commissions that they will charge as in each interest rate that they will basically negotiate. They will be keeping a commission and they will negotiate it accordingly. But you don't have to
Thank you.
so much over it.
So I have a question.
One second, Swajana. What people will predominantly want to understand from you, especially in an interview setup is, or in your mocks and viva, is what does an ISDA do? Why is ISDA needed? That's what we are trying to arrive at, right? ISDA is a master agreement. What does it do? It predominantly is a legal contract, right? So it is safeguarding you against the risk of default that exists in OTC market. How do they do that? Is what we are going to arrive at now. My next statement is that answer to this question. However, Saujanya has a question. Let's take that first.
So I'm actually bad with numbers, so I'm just curious. When you said floating rate is LIBOR plus 10 BPS, right? How did you arrive at 2.1% is my question.
So I said, right, LIBOR is 2%.
Oh, you said LIBOR is 2. So the LIBOR plus 10 BPS is nothing but 2.1%.
Yeah, so 100 bips is 100 bips is 1%.
100 bips is 1%. Okay.
Yes. Okay. So in interest rate world, rate of interest is predominantly reflected in points. So 100 bips is a pointer. 10 bips, 25 bips, 35 bips, like that they talk.
Okay.
Okay. And that is an equivalent in terms of certain percentage. And that percentage is 1%. And then there will be an absolute number with which you will multiply with the notional amount, which will help you to arrive what exactly is the interest amount that you are paying.
Okay, okay. So basically you guys took 2.1% of that 1 million, which is nothing but notional. Okay, I forgot to see that. I was wondering how did you people arrive at 21,000? I did not see that 1 million. Okay, okay. Now it's, yeah, thank you.
No problem. So my question here is, now that you have understood party B will post collateral, my question here is, what will that collateral be? Who will decide what should be the collateral? Who will decide? And okay, let's make it very simple question. Who will decide what will that collateral be?
One who is at the risk of receiving, party A.
No, this is where ISDA comes into picture. Exactly, Anand. So ISDA comes into picture. ISDA defines the collateral to be used. Is it clear, guys? This is what is the role of ISDA in the whole OTC derivative. As I mentioned at the start, ISDA is a master agreement. What do you mean by master agreement? Master agreement means it will supersede anything that is agreed between two parties in case of a default. Whatever is written in ISDA will hold good in the court of law, okay, if there is a default. Which means ISDA is also creating a provision for you to cover against the risk of default. For every default, you will not go to a court, right? Right? Which is where they said, fine, let me define the collateral also that needs to be posted. So ISDA defines the collateral to be used, which means any tradable security or cash agreed in currency, sorry, or cash, yeah, let's put it as cash, can be used as collateral. Damn it, I gave you the answer. I should have asked you to answer this. Okay, no problem. I'll have something else to ask to you guys. What is a tradable security? What is a cash that can be used as collateral? So now you have understood who will post the collateral. You have understood who will decide what collateral can be posted, and you have understood what are the types of collateral. It could be a tradable security or it could be a cash. My question to you guys is, what do you mean by a tradable security?
Tradable securities are common stocks, bonds, ETFs.
Bond is a tradable security? Yes, no? Guys, bond is a tradable security? Yes, no? Security will be traded easily on secondary market and is highly liquid. Yes, yes, bond is a tradable security. Yes, you can buy and sell bonds after it is issued in the primary market. Very good, thank you. Right? What do you mean by cash here? Cash means cash. There is nothing to it. Perpetual bonds, whatever the type of bonds you're there, this will be specified, Ritesh, which is what I'm coming to now. So ISDA says any tradable bond can be collateral. ISDA says any cash can be collateral. However, two parties are allowed to negotiate certain terms and conditions of ISDA. How? Through CSA. It's called Credit Support Annexure. So Credit Support Annexure is a negotiated document. Okay. What do you mean by a negotiated document? Any term mentioned in ISDA master agreement can be negotiated, but has to be captured somewhere. Just can be altered, right, Preeti? But can be captured somewhere. Where? CSA. Which means a CSA can tell you that ISDA tells that any bond can be a tradable security. Okay. However, a CSA can tell you only, let's say, a Japanese bond, an Australian bond, an American bond is what I'm going to accept as collateral. So when two parties, they negotiate types of collaterals by talking about various subtypes of it. So this is a type of collateral, tradable security. What type of tradable security? Let's say bonds. What type of bonds can also be negotiated? And that negotiation is documented in Credit Support Annexure. And Credit Support Annexure tells you, CSA tells not all bond types, but only, let's say, a Japanese bonds or an Australian bond will be accepted as collateral. This can be negotiated between two parties, right?
Sir, in tradable securities, we can say stocks and ETFs also, right?
Yes, yes, but ETFs, etc., cannot be used as a collateral.
Sir, I wish to ask which bonds, which company we will own only that, na? Or
Government bonds. Government bonds.
government. Okay, okay.
Okay. 1 second, Parul, I'll come to that. So ISDA says cash. CSA can say cash in euro, USD, let's say CHF currency only. What is CHF?
Swiss franc.
Thank you. Okay. Any questions up until now? Have you guys understood?
Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question here. So when you say that it is a legal agreement binded by the law, so you have given three countries with which its law is binded. So if we are doing this,
No. What I'm saying here is that ISDA says any type of any cash in any currency can be used as a collateral. But two parties who are entering into the agreement says no, I want collateral to be posted only in these three currencies. I don't want any other currency. It is not dependent on the law of the master agreement. This can be negotiated.
no, actually on the top you have talked about that there are like three, Tokyo and New York.
Yeah, I
And
know, but that does not define this.
no, I'm not talking about this. I'm talking about actually I had question in that concern.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ask me question.
Yeah. So if we are dealing in India, so with which country we have to approach? Will it be our choice or do we have any rules for that?
Unfortunately, Indian market doesn't allow swap transactions.
Like
As of today. There is nothing called as swaps in Indian market.
okay, so we don't need to worry about that basically.
You should worry because you are not going to work for Indian market. So it's important for you to know what happens in the global market because you will be working with an international bank after course completion and getting placed.
So, sir, thank you for telling me that India doesn't deal in swap. So let's consider there is a company based in Tokyo and it enters into CDS with United States company. So, sir, which countries legal procedures will follow in this swap
Depending on the
agreement?
law depending on the law which master agreement is governed by. So two parties can sign a New York law, two parties can sign a Tokyo law, it depends, and that is the law that will be governing.
Okay, so it will be predetermined in this agreement.
The agreement are only of three types. You can either sign an English law, a New York law, or a Tokyo law. So whenever you choose, one of them will automatically be falling under these three law, and you will be binded by that court of law of that particular city.
Okay. Any reason, sir, why Indian government has not allowed it till date?
India is not a very matured market at this point of time. We are a big market, but we are not too matured to handle the sensitivities of too much of interest rate fluctuations, etc. And second aspect is in the last 20 years or so, banking industry has really what do you call it? Not really been extremely honest with which they deal, which in terms of how they lend money and all those things. So there are a lot of non-performing assets, which means at any point of time, if there are too much of price fluctuations given on a particular floating rate, let's say MIBOR in India, there are very high chances that there can be misuse, etc., that might start happening. and we are still very, very not immune to global impact. Right.
So I have a question. So when you're saying CSA only takes Japanese and Australian bonds as collateral, so
No,
what
no,
does
no,
that
no.
mean if they? Okay.
CSA does not take that. What I'm saying is, you and me, we signed an agreement. Okay, fine.
Okay.
In that agreement, it said that whenever you have to pay me money, you will pay me in currency denomination of 500 or currency denomination of 2000 or currency denomination of 100. Fine. This
Okay.
is clear up until now. However,
Yes.
you and me decide that, yeah, 2000 is very big currency. We don't want to really pay each other in that. So we will only stick to 100 and 500. So we negotiated the master agreement, correct?
Yes.
Similarly, if you and me are, let's say, two investment banks, you are, let's say, Barclays and I am a Society General, and we agreed to enter into a contract, and the contract said any type of bonds can be used as a collateral. But you and me said that no, we will list down the type of bonds that we specifically want to use as a collateral. So you will say, fine, I want Japanese bonds as a collateral. So I will say, fine, I also want an Australian bond as a collateral. We both agree. We will say, fine, of all the bond types, whenever collateral is posted to us, it will either be in Japanese bond or an Australian bond.
Okay.
Again, there are parties who can negotiate more. If someone will say, I also want treasury bills, someone will say, fine, I want gilts. Gilts is a UK bond. So it can be multiple type of bonds can be mentioned. I'm just giving you a simple example for ease of understanding here. It does not mean that CSA will always only have a Japanese and Australian bond as collateral. No, this is an example.
And the example also says Euro, USD, and CHF. All these are also just in that agreement. Either I can go with these two bonds, or I can say these three, cash types.
Yeah, so
right?
you can also pay collateral in form of cash. You can also pay money to me against the risk that you have, against the risk I'm exposed to. If you want to post collateral to me, I'm saying you can post cash collateral to me only in these denominated currencies. You cannot come and say, I will pay you in Japanese yen.
Okay.
ISDA might say you can pay in Japanese yen, but you and me agreed that we will not use Japanese yen. We will only use these three currencies.
Okay. This is just an example, right? You're just showing, but it can be extended to other currencies and other country bonds, right? You're just showing an example.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Okay.
Excuse me, sir.
Can I move on? Yep.
So once agreed, this ISDA MA can it be amended or modified? Hello.
Sorry.
Yeah, I'm saying once agreed, can the ISDA MA be amended or modified?
No. MA can never be modified. It's a master agreement. It can only have versions which can be published by the association. But master agreement, you and me cannot modify. Only the association can modify.
Fine. Thank you.
Okay, so now that you have understood ISDA, now let's fit all of this, okay, into the trade life cycle, right? Fine. So this is what your ISDA world is all about. Now, what you need to predominantly understand is, tell me the steps of trade life cycle: trade initiation, then trade, next trade initiation, then am I audible? Okay, trade execution. Thank you.
Capture, trade capture.
Yep. Then
trade enrichment.
Trade enrichment. Okay. Hmm. Trade confirmation is not final. After this, trade settlement and trade recon, right? Reconciliation. This is your trade life cycle predominantly for an exchange or a general trade life cycle. But in OTC trade life cycle, there is one additional thing that happens here, and it's called as trade affirmation. Whoa, I had not saved this document till now. PLC OTC 94. Okay. Yeah, before trade initiation, clients capturing. That's not the right word, client acquisition, but it's okay. It's not important to mention it always, but if you're mentioning your sales, that's client acquisition, Saurabh. It's not client capturing. Okay. Capturing sounds a scary word. It's like a kidnap. Right. So you say acquisition. It's a more refined terminology in the industry. Cool. Okay. So guys, you were aware of all the steps up until now, but there has been an addition. This is the addition. Trade affirmation. Now, can someone tell me how is affirmation and confirmation different to each other? What do you mean by the word of affirmation and confirmation? Leave it here, not in trade life cycle. What is the general meaning of affirmation and confirmation? How are they different from each other? Are they even different from each other in the first place? And if they are, can anyone tell me what do you think is a difference?
Affirmation would be something when we are validating or confirming that yes, we have agreed to the agreement. And confirmation we can deny also.
Okay. Who gave that answer? Who was the person who spoke? Why are you on mute now?
Okay, yeah, it's me, Preeti.
Okay. Yeah, Preeti.
Hello.
Yeah, okay, fine. I will not say you're incorrect here, but yeah, fine. Affirmation is a declaration, confirmation, support or verification. Confirmation means to approve, confirmation is verification. Then what is affirmation? Okay, fair enough. In the interest of time, I'll move. So guys, affirmation and confirmation does not differ by much in its meaning as such. Okay, there is a very small difference to it. Okay, let me first give you an understanding what happens, right? So swaps are traded electronically today. Okay, when we say swaps are traded electronically, what happens is traders between two IBs will agree the trade and will give it up to a platform called market. Okay. Market is a OMGO product. Read little more about OMGO later on. It's a market service provider who provides a lot of platforms today utilized by investment banks. So market is an OMGO product. What is market?
Sir, IHS market company, sir.
IHS. What is IHS market? Sorry, I've not heard of it.
I think it is a collaboration between
Could
IHS
be.
and Market
Could
Group,
be.
data
Yeah,
company.
could be. Yeah. Yes. Exactly, you're right. Right? So swap trades, okay, are traded, which means, okay, let me write this, initiated and executed, what do we write it? Executed on market, but is captured in RMS or OMS. Is this clear to you guys? So just like when you trade on equity, you go to an exchange, right? On that exchange, you initiate the order and it gets executed on the exchange itself. Similarly, for swap trading to take place, market is that platform. Because there is no exchange, there is an third-party platform called market on which the swap trades are initiated and executed. From there, the trade has to be then captured in your RMS and OMS. Is this clear? Market is an application, yes.
Sir, sorry to cut you in between. I wish to ask, you have written swaps are traded electronically, so they are traded as frequently as stocks or F&O, because sir, strong negotiation process is there,
Yes.
na? Master
Huge market.
agreement.
Huge market. OTC derivative is a huge market. In that, OTC derivative in itself is a very huge market.
Okay.
So in one of my stints with one of the investment banks, I got a chance to work on in a team which used to basically reconcile ISDA. And we used to look at legal terms and credit terms that are mentioned on ISDA, and we used to reconcile it. On daily basis, we used to reconcile individually around 50 records. 50 records means 50 trading accounts had to be reconciled with 50 different ISDAs. And we were a team of around 10 people. So you can understand close to 500 reconciliation process used to take place almost every day. It's a huge market, huge market. Okay. That was just to give you an idea of how huge.
From where does ops guys come into the picture in this, sir?
This in itself is an ops work. So
from starting trade initiation.
From
yes, trade in. Okay.
Ops comes. Sometimes ops are divided into middle office and they are said this is a middle office work. Okay. However, sometimes this can be directly in the operations. Middle office is also an operation one itself. Okay. So sometimes you're called a middle office team, sometimes you're not called a middle office team. It again depends. Okay. Right. So it is when you're capturing it in RMS and OMS, right? Before capturing it in RMS, OMS, trade affirmation has to, sorry. Before Okay, let me put it this way. So confirmation in OTC derivative happens over confirmation document. Let me put it this way. It's going to be easier for you to understand. Okay, so when you are confirming an OTC derivative, right? So once you have got the trade from market and you have captured it in your RMS OMS, right? Then confirmation has to take place. Okay, but confirmation is a lengthy process in an OTC derivative. It happens over a confirmation document, also called as long form confirmation, LFC, right? But as confirmation is a lengthy process, L-E-N-G-H-T-H-Y. This is how you write spelling of lengthy, right? Lengthy process. Trade needs to be affirmed. Now you will understand the difference. When I say affirm, right, it's a agreement of trade details over an email. Okay, so the process, visualize the process in your head. Okay, how do you, let me, so how do you, what you need to basically understand is the trade got booked on market, understand it as a platform. Let me see if, okay. You guys can see me now?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay, can you see my hand movements?
Yes.
Okay, so what I'm saying is, consider market as a platform. Okay, two parties come and give their trades on it. Okay, they come and give the trades on it. Now what happened? This trade has been captured by middle office team in the RMS or OMS, and it flows down to the settlement confirmation in the settlement team. Now the confirmation team basically has to draft a confirmation document. It's a process. There will be a long form confirmation. You will input everything in that and you will fax it. Confirmation is a documentation oriented process in an OTC derivative market. However, I have booked the trade today. Confirmation might take, let's say, one week. Okay, because I am faxing you the document. It is done electronically, but I am faxing you the document. You're taking a look at it, and then you are again signing and sending it back. This is a lengthy process. But up until then, you cannot leave the trade unagreed, and which is where trade affirmation comes into picture. Understanding it? Have you understood it, guys? Yes, no? So affirmation has to be done before confirmation. So if somebody asks you, explain me difference between affirmation and confirmation, you will say affirmation is a process where swap trade details are agreed over an email. Confirmation is a process where you use long form confirmation documents to confirm the trade details. Then someone will say, why do you need these two? So you will explain confirmation process can be lengthy. It can take you a week's time, or it can take you more than a week also in certain cases. You cannot leave the trade unagreed. Then someone will ask you, why can you not leave the trade unagreed? Now, this is a technical question I want you to think about. Can you tell me why will you not leave a trade unagreed? When you are already doing a confirmation, fine, it is going to take 1 week, 1 month, fine. But why do you need to agree the details on an email, which calling it affirmation? Why can't you leave it unagreed? What's the risk out there? Can anyone think and tell me the answer? What if other parties bail out? No, not necessarily.
Sir, because we have utilized the time and resources of that market platform. That's why.
Will you give this answer to someone in the interview? Really? No, I am also saying everything should be in written format. Fine. Yes. But why didn't so you're already doing a documentation, right, Preeti, in form of confirmation using a long form confirmation method. So why are you affirming it over an email? Why do you need to agree the trade details the day the trade is booked? Why is it needed? To confirm both of them have gone through the documents and to finally approve it. Yeah, very close, Anupam. There are two reasons for it. Your clue again is the word starting with E and ending in E. None of your answers are incorrect, but you have to find an apt answer. And the clue is E, the word starting with E and ending with E. And you already know that word now. I've already told it to you. Now I've made it easier with my second clue. Now someone think. Effective date, yes. What happens from the effective date? What happens from the effective date? Trade execution doesn't happen from effective date. Trade execution happens on trade date itself. It's a millisecond thing. Guys, I told you what becomes effective from effective date. This is bad. Apply the thoughts. IR, what is IR? IR doesn't mean anything. Interest rate also doesn't mean anything. Calculation of interest rate starts. So if no payment here, come on, Sunny. If trade date is 26th October, okay, effective date is, let's say, 28th only. I will not use 6/26, but your confirmation will happen only by 5th November. What happened on 28th? What commenced? Your interest rate calculation started. Yes, which means your interest accrual has already started from the effective date. Now, if your interest rate is already started from effective date, and let's say the interest rate that is mentioned is incorrect, you will be calculating incorrect interest rate. There is a risk that IR could be captured incorrectly. So to avoid any trade So to avoid any error error on trade details agreed, affirmation is done while confirmation is in progress. Understood, guys? So what is the difference between a trade life cycle of an OTC and an exchange? The only difference is there is a trade affirmation in between, right? So in a trade, when you initiate the trade, you are placing your order, which then gets executed. And once you get the details, you capture it in your RMS and OMS. Then the enrichment takes place. It is an automated process. Post that, the validations happens in terms of whether all the details have been captured correctly or not. Verification is done. And after that, trade affirmation is done, wherein you are agreeing the trade details with the counterparty over an email, just so that you are having the right interest calculations, post which confirmation is going to be done through the long form documentation process. On the payment date, money will be exchanged, and post that reconciliation happens. And this is what your trade life cycle of an OTC steps are. And before anybody even does the trade initiation, two parties have to sign ISDA master agreement, which is the governing body for any OTC derivative transactions globally. And that's what your topic for today was. And I'm now open to questions.
Hi, I have a small question. So during the interviews, if they ask us what's the difference between TLC of exchange and OTC markets, we just have to explain.
They will never ask this to you. They will tell me trade life cycle.
Okay, so it's up to us what we want to go ahead with.
Predominantly, I generally suggest people to speak the general trade life cycle when you're in an interview, rather than showing off your knowledge a lot, because it's always a risk there. However, if you're applying for an OTC derivative job, you will get the JDs, right? You will obviously have the JDs when you're applying, and you know that you're going for an OTC derivative position. Talk about affirmation and confirmation, which is going to be an important part. But if you're not going for an OTC derivative position, talk about the general trade life cycle. If somebody specifically asks what happens in OTC derivative, then go ahead and explain the affirmation and confirmation process. No, please do not stop recording. Oh yeah, you can stop recording now. Yeah, Prabha.